Hi everybody! Welcome to the first tutorial video for the Imperial Commander Editor. In this video, I'm going to create an entire mission on screen so you can follow along and recreate the mission yourself. Jonathan Pierce gave me the permission to create the first mission of his custom In the Dark campaign, Spearhead. In the Dark is a custom campaign created by Jonathan Pierce and can be downloaded via the link in the video description. Check it out, it's a pretty amazing piece of work. First, let's talk about preparations. I've got the mission open at any time so I can reference it because I'm going to need it. I've also copied down all the description text from the mission into an extra text document so I can easier copy and paste it into the mission editor so you don't have to watch me type the entire time. Apart from that, of course, I've got a folder open with Imperial Commander and another one with the Imperial Commander Editor, which is pretty much all I'm going to need. I've also opened the wiki documentation in the background just in case I need to reference it, because it's a good source for all kinds of information about the Imperial Commander Editor. Before we begin, if you want to, you can download the campaign from the video description and take a look at the mission so that you are familiar with it and can easier follow along. It's not necessary though, I will explain all the steps as we come to them. Let's get started. First, open the Imperial Commander Editor and click on New Mission to create a new mission. This opens the main screen of the Imperial Commander Editor. Let me give you a quick overview of the user interface. This is the main screen, where you can set mission settings, create the map, create sections, edit the mission properties, and so on. On the left, you have triggers, which are used to trigger events, and the events themselves. Events are everything that changes the game state of the mission. So for example, when you open a door, you create an event, open door, and then tell the app what to do when the door is open. I'll go into more detail as we go along, but for now let's just get started. Mission name is easy, it's Spearhead, and it is a story mission because it's the first introduction mission of the campaign. It does not have a mission ID because the mission ID is only used for official campaigns. Include Factions tells the app which factions to include when creating open groups. In this case, we can just leave Imperial and Mercenary on, although, depending on the story, it might make sense here to deactivate Imperial and only have Mercenary groups appear. The mission does not have a fixed ally, and it also has no banned allies, because theoretically you could bring any ally to it, although it is the introduction mission, so the players won't have earned any allies so far. Enemy groups can be placed on the banned list. This makes sure that they don't appear in the mission. So for example, you can stop a Banter Rider from appearing in the middle of a city. We are going to set a few groups on the banned list, Wampas, Tusken Raiders and so on, to make sure they don't appear in this urban mission. As you can see, all those groups are now on the banned list, so they won't appear in the mission. Let's go over to the right side. The campaign name, of course, is In the Dark. You can leave the priority target as is, because there is no specific mission target in this mission. There are also no specific mission instructions in this mission, so you can leave this alone for now. Each mission needs to start with an event. This is called the starting event. You can just click on this icon to add a new event. We will call it Mission Briefing, because this is usually the first event, and the most common kind of event is just a text window displayed. In this case, we are going to enter the text later. For now, we're just going to call it Mission Briefing in the event text. This is just some dummy text to appear, so I can show you later how this works. You also have the option to set starting mission infos and objectives, but we'll leave it empty for now, so I can show you how to set mission info and objective in the event. Now that the basic parameters are set, it's time to head over to the next tab, Enemy Groups. Let's go back to the mission. Each mission in Imperial Assault has initial and reserved groups, or at least most of them do. In this case, the Hired Guns and Gamorrean Guard as initial groups, and Wing Guard and Twin Hunters as reserved groups. We just type in Gamorrean Guard, for example, and add them to the initial group, and then do the same with the Hired Guns. We can then place the Wing Guard in the reserved groups and the Twin Hunters as well. Now it's time for the fun part, creating the map. So let's head over to the map editor. The plus sign in the middle is just a reference point. It makes sense to build your map on or around it, but for now you can safely ignore it. You can zoom the map view with a scroll wheel and drag and drop it around to pan it. This icon opens the tile list. Now we need to go back to the mission and find out what tiles we actually need. First, we set the slider to display side B and then scroll down to tile number 20, which is one of the tiles we need. Click with the right mouse button to add it to the tile queue and then repeat this for all the tiles that are given below in the mission. If you want to add multiple copies of one tile, click it multiple times. Once you're done, click Insert Queue. There's one tile still missing from the Jabba expansion, so let's open the tile gallery again and select Jabba. It's tile number 2B, so we set the slider to B and add Jabba tile B. When placing the tile queue, the tiles are placed in a pile, but you can just drag them apart to see them better. Zoom in and then start creating the map. You can drag and drop tiles with the left mouse button and rotate them with the right mouse button to create the map. One important thing is, don't forget to save your mission. Just click the button and save it in the Custom Missions folder in the Imperial Commander folder. Just give it a name, for example, In the Dark 1, Spearhead, and done. Okay, now the map tiles are in place, but there are still a lot of map elements missing, so let's switch back to the map. I'm going to start with the entrance. There's no specific entrance element in the Imperial Commander Editor, so instead I'm going to use a highlight to show where the entrance is supposed to be. To add a highlight, simply click on the exclamation mark and then drag the highlight into position. On the right, it's very important to name every element that you place, so I'm going to just name this entrance, as you can see. Since the entrance is blue, I'm going to give it a blue color and tell the app that it is active from the start. This means that the highlight is displayed as soon as the mission starts. Highlights can have a certain duration. By default, the duration of a highlight is set to 0, which means infinite. This means that the highlight doesn't disappear, but is simply shown for the entirety of the mission. The entrance, however, is only important in the first round because it's only used to deploy the heroes, so I'm going to give it a duration of 1. This means that after 1 round, the highlight is going to disappear. Next, let's add the deployment points. Let's get back to the map first. There are 3 deployment points, 1 green, 1 red, 1 yellow. We're going to add them one after the other. To add a deployment point, simply click this icon and then drag the deployment point into position. I'm going to call it DP Green 1, set it to active because it's a green deployment point and so it's active, and set the color to green. The next deployment point is here. This is the red deployment point. And this one is left inactive because it's not used as an active deployment point. It's just there to indicate where the Trandoshan hunters later will be deployed in the mission. This only leaves the yellow deployment point. Let's check the map again. It's at the bottom right corner. Here. It's called DP yellow 1. And this is an active deployment point. I'm going to explain this later too. And of course, it's yellow. So now we got the basic deployment points here. We still need some more deployment points though, because we have to tell the app where the initial groups are placed. So let's add 4 more deployment points, 1 for each initial figure. This is going to be the deployment point for the first Gamorrean guard. I tend to make them black in color, but you can choose any color you like. And because they are not active deployment points, they are set to inactive. I'm going to place them right where the first Gamorrean guard is supposed to be. Now you don't have to place each deployment point manually. You can simply place one, select it, and tap D to duplicate it. And then you can drag it into position and simply change the name. Don't forget to change the name, this is really important. There are still the 2 hired guns, so let's give them deployment points 2. This for the first one. And this for the second one. This wraps up the deployment points. We now need to assign the initial figures to their deployment points, so let's head over to the Enemy Groups tab and then click Edit and Edit Deployment Points. Here we can set specific deployment points for each figure, so the Gamos just get DP Gamo 1 and Gamo 2, and let's do the same for the hired guns. And save. Let's not forget saving. I realized I forgot to add a description to the entrance, so let's just double click it to open the properties and then enter deploy the heroes here. This should be enough. Alright, now that we got our basic map in place, we can take a look at it in Imperial Commander. I'm just going to open the app. We click on Saga because we only want to play a single mission right now, New Game, and toggle between official and custom at the bottom so we can see our mission up here. I'm going to add some heroes, doesn't matter who, and click Start. As you can see, the map now appears exactly as we built it in the editor, and when I click Continue, the initial groups are going to be placed at their deployment points. The mission briefing text is pretty much empty right now, but we're going to change this later. And I can also click the entrance to display the text. Okay, I think that's enough for now. Let's get back to the editor. Before we continue building the mission, however, I want to tell you about one neat trick, Debug mode. Debug mode allows the app Imperial Commander to launch directly into a mission, skipping the intro, skipping the hero and ally selection, and just starting the mission outright without you having to wait for the intro to finish. This is very helpful when building missions and testing out new builds. I'm going to show you how it's done. First, we head over to the Imperial Commander folder, right-click and click on Create Shortcut. We can name it whatever we want, but let's say we name it Launch Debug Mode. Now you right-click on it, select Properties, and now we need the target. At the end of the line, add Custom Missions / and then the name of the mission. In our case, it's the Spearhead mission. And click OK. Now when I click this shortcut, the app launches directly into the mission without any intro or hero selection or ally selection. Let's try it out. See, this is pretty neat. In case you're wondering, the Nexu was deployed because we brought an ally with us, which triggers an optional deployment. You can just ignore that. One of the best features of debug mode is that when I click on Return to Title, the app doesn't return to the title, but instead reloads the mission, including any changes I have made in the meantime in the Imperial Commander Editor. So when I click on Return to Title, it just loads the mission again. I'm going to demonstrate this to you by heading over to the Imperial Commander Editor and deleting one of the tiles, in this case Core 28B. Now I save it, get back to the Imperial Commander, click Return to Title, and it reloads the mission without the tile, because I just deleted it. So you can make changes in the Imperial Commander Editor, tap over to Imperial Commander, immediately check them, make more changes, check them, and so on, without having to go through the entire process of the intro, hero selection, and so on. It's really neat, and I recommend you use it heavily. Okay, there are still some map elements missing, namely doors and crates. So let's add them. First, to add a door, click this icon, then drag it into position. You can right-click it, rotate it, but this is not necessary here. And you can also double-click it to add a description. On the map, we see that we need 3 doors. So let's name this one Door 1. Just duplicate it for Door 2 and duplicate it again for door number 3. Now, because door 2 and 3 aren't locked, we can simply delete the sentence about it being locked. Now, to add a crate, simply click this icon, drag it into position. Don't forget to check the position. Name it crate 1 and give it a short description. We need 3 more, so let's just duplicate this, rename them. Don't forget to rename them, it's very important. And we're done. We can go back to Imperial Commander, restart the mission, and immediately see the crates and the doors. Now, as you can see in Imperial Commander, by default the entire map is displayed at once. Personally, I prefer it if the players don't see the entire map at once, but instead keep wondering what is going to wait for them in the mission. And this is where sections come in. Let's get back to the editor. Sections allow you to divide the map into logical pieces. So, based on the map of the mission, for example, we could use this as one section, then the munition works and the factory as the second section, and then the turret room as the third section. Logical entities that are connected and that are divided by locked or at least closed doors. In the Imperial Commander Editor, you always have a start section, and all the tiles that you place at the start are assigned to the start section. To add more sections, head over to the Section tab and then click on New Section up here. We're going to name the second section Munition Works and tell the app that this is going to be invisible until activated. Yes. Get back to the section, add a third section, let's call it Turret Room, and this is supposed to be invisible until activated too. When you return to the map editor, you see that the entire map is grayed out right now. This is because the turret room is selected as the active section and no tiles or entities are currently assigned to it. When I go back to the start section, you see that the map is there as before. However, I want to assign a few of the tiles and entities to the sections, so let's get to the munition works first. To assign a tile or an element to a section, click the tile click Change Owner, and this assigns it to the current section. So I have Munition Works selected and added that tile to Munition Works. I'm going to repeat this for all the entities and the rest of the tiles. So you can now see the start section and the Munition Works. Oh, I realized I forgot to re-add tile 28B. So let's do this and put it there. Because Munition Works was selected, tile B is immediately placed in the section Munition Works. I'm going to repeat this for the section Turret Room. I just select all the tiles and entities and change the owner. There you are. The map is now divided in the start section, the Munition Works, and the Turret Room. When you go back to Imperial Commander, you can immediately see this in effect. Now only the tiles from the first section are placed. So how do we make more sections visible? We can do this via events later. I'm going to explain it to you as we go along. First, let's return to the editor. There's one more important thing about sections. All the entities assigned to a section only become active when the entire section is activated. So for example, the yellow deployment point is set to active, but because it is assigned to section number 2, the Munition Works, and section number 2 is inactive at the start, the deployment point is also inactive. It only becomes active once the entire section becomes active. So you don't have to worry about enemies deploying to the yellow deployment point before they should, because they only become active once you activate the entire section. The map is ready now. If you ever forget something, don't worry. You can go back to the map editor and change whatever you want, but for now, let's call it done and head over to the next thing, to the events. Events in Imperial Commander are not only story events, but everything that changes the game state. For example, if I want the players to be able to open a door, I need to create an event, Open Door, that allows them to do this. Events can be launched by one of two things. Either by a direct player interaction, for example clicking a button, or by a trigger or variable that listens in the background for a certain condition to be met. First, let's create a very easy event, the opening of a crate. To create an event, click on the plus icon and give it a name. Let's say Open Crate 1. Events usually have an event text that tells the players what happens. In this case, I have already prepared one, and I'm just going to copy it in and hit accept. Now, after the crate is opened, we want the crate to disappear, to be discarded. And this is where event actions come into play. Event actions allow you to manipulate the board, the map, or anything else. In this case, we are going to add the event action map and tokens, modify map entity, because we want to modify the crate. We have here a list of all the map entities. So let's just select crate 1, hit the plus, and deactivate it. This means that as soon as this event is launched, the crate is deactivated, meaning it's going to be discarded. Hit accept and save. Now we need to tell the app to launch the event as soon as the button on the crate is clicked. So let's double click on the crate. This is crate number 1. Click add new button and let's call it open. I'm also going to add this symbol. This is turned into a little arrow symbol by the app, telling the players that this is going to need the interaction action. On the right, when clicked, fire event, we select Open Crate 1, accept, and save. This is it. You don't have to do anything more. We can check it in Imperial Commander. Let's restart the mission. Now I can click on the crate, click open, it displays the text, and then discards the crate. We have 3 crates on the map, but luckily we don't need to do this for every single one. We can just duplicate the event and have the basic settings set. Let's call this Open Crate 2, and of course the modified map entity should be Crate 2. Duplicate it again, call it Open Crate 3, and done. Now we just add the buttons to the crates. And tell them to launch their respective events. And that's it. All the crates are done now. You can add interactions like buttons for the crates to pretty much any map entity with the exception of deployment points. But you can add them to highlights, to doors, or to any kind of token. Okay, now that the crates are finished, let's tackle the rest of the events. For that, we take a look at the mission again. The mission contains a couple of events. The mission briefing, busted when the first door opens, last stand when the second door opens, and both end of mission events, either a rebel victory or a rebel defeat. The mission briefing also is kind of interesting because it contains a choice. This is unusual but easy to implement in the Imperial Commander Editor. To start, I'm going to tackle the mission briefing event and implement that. The mission briefing starts with a description of the heroes descending into the underworld. Those 2 paragraphs are simple text windows, and we can copy and paste them into the event. I've already prepared the text, and I'm going to copy the first 2 paragraphs and simply paste it into the mission description. After that, the heroes meet 2 civil protection officers and have to decide either to pay them 50 credits or to fight through the guard. We could do this with another text window, but I'm going to show you another event action that is customized for that. We go to Dialogues and then Question Prompt. Now we copy the paragraph with the protection officers into it, here, and add 2 buttons. The first is pay 50 credits. The second is fight the guards. Alright. Of course, we need more events for that. We need 1 event for the payment option and 1 event for the fight option. So let's create them. We go back into the editor and click the plus sign to open a new event. Let's call this event Mission Briefing Payment, and a second event Mission Briefing Fight. Now we have to link the events to the buttons, so we go back to the mission briefing, double click to open the question prompt, and just link them to the respective events so that when the button is pressed, the respective event is launched. Mission briefing payment is pretty easy because nothing much happens. There's just a text window that tells the rebels that they lose 50 credits from the final mission rewards, and then the mission continues. So we can just open it, edit the text, and paste in or write in the text. Now we need to tell the rebels what actually happens, and so we put in subtract 50 credits from the final mission rewards. Note that I put this in braces. This means it will be indented and a square bullet will put in place of it, so it can be differentiated from the description text. The second option is a bit more complicated, but still easy to do with the Imperial Commander Editor. As you can see in the mission, if the heroes decide to fight through the guard, they need to test strength and add the results together, and they need 4 or more successes to pass. For this, we can use the event action input prompt. Input prompt means that the players can input a value, for example, a number of successes, and then get a result depending on the number they put in. So we just give them a little description up here, and then we can add value ranges. 0 successes to 3 successes is going to be a failure, and everything from 4 successes and up is going to be a success. We enter -1 here because this is the shorthand for infinite, so this is going to catch everything including 4 and above. Of course, we also need to tell the players what to do, so we add something like each hero tests strength, add the successes together and input them. Just so you know, the K I put in praises is going to be converted into the strength symbol. You can always click on symbols to see a list of the shorthands. We're still not done because we also need events for the results, for what happens if they fail the test or if they pass the test. So let's go back to the editor and click on Edit Input for the value range 0 to 3. We can create a new event here and call it, for example, guard fight failure. What happens is that they get a little description text and one hero becomes weakened. I'm just going to copy the description text over and then add choose one hero that hero becomes weakened. That's it. And another one for the success. Here we have the success text. I'm just going to call it guard fight success and copy this in. So now, not reaching enough successes launches the event guard fight failure, and gaining enough successes launches the event guard fight success. We're still not done with the mission briefing. After they fight or after they decide to pay, the mission briefing still continues. So now we need to tell the app to continue the mission briefing with the rest of the description and the actual goal of the mission. We could take the text of the mission briefing continuation and just put it into all the events that we just created. This would work, but it's also a lot of work, and if we want to go back and change things, we'd have to change it in every single instance. It's much easier to create another event and link the other events to it so that the mission continues as soon as they have made their choice and the results are clear. For that, we use a trigger. Triggers can be changed by direct player input, but they can also be changed by events in the background so that the players don't really notice it. So we now create a trigger and call it Mission Briefing Continues. We could leave everything else as is, but I'm going to set the maximum value to 1, just so that no complications occur. Now we create another event called Mission Briefing Continue. This is the end of the mission briefing with a large description text, so I'm going to copy the description text over into the mission description. There. Triggers always start with a value of 0 by default, although you can change that if you want to, and I want the event Mission Briefing Continue to launch as soon as the trigger reaches the value 1. So I'm going to open the event window, add the trigger under additional triggers, and set the value to 1. This means that the event Mission Briefing Continue launches as soon as the trigger Mission Briefing Continue reaches the value of 1. There are three possible events that can launch the mission briefing continue event. Mission briefing payment, when the rebels pay, guard fight failure, when they decide to fight but fail, and guard fight success, when they decide to fight and succeed. So let's tell those events to change the value of the trigger. We open the event and add the general event action modify variable. Then we simply select mission briefing continues and tell the editor to set it to 1. We could also increase or decrease it, but in this case we want to set it to a specific value. Let's repeat this for the others. And save it. What now happens is that the mission briefing continues through the series of events until it reaches mission briefing continue. Let's take a look at how it looks in Imperial Commander. Here's the first mission briefing. Now the second part, where you need to decide whether to pay 50 credits or fight the guards. Let's say we fight the guards, then we enter the successes. Let's say we gain 3 successes. This is not enough. That hero becomes weakened. And now the mission briefing continues until the end of the mission briefing. That worked. Let's try the other option. I restart the mission. Click through the windows, and then choose to pay 50 credits. They say it's a smart move, and we continue to the end of the mission briefing. It works. Okay, final touches for the mission briefing. The mission briefing not only contains the narrative text, but also the rules and objectives, and we need to implement that too. So let's open the mission briefing continue again, and add another text window here that tells the players round 6 or when all heroes are wounded. I'm going to copy this because it's always a good idea to put that into the mission info too. The mission info can be accessed from the app Imperial Commander by clicking the I button and is a constant reminder of what the heroes need to do. So I'm going to General, change mission info, and just paste this in here. I also add a new objective, change objective, and just write open the door to the munition works. Let's save it, go back to Imperial Commander, and try it out. I pay 50 credits, and now here's the text box and the objective. And we can open the mission info to get a reminder of what to do. The mission briefing is done, so we can now get to work on the first door. Opening the door to the munition works requires a test, a tech test, so we first add a new event and call it munition works door test. We can leave the text box empty because we are going to add some text in the input prompt box. We launch the event action input prompt so people can input a value of successes, and then write, for example, you get to work on opening the door into the facility. And then tell them what to do. Test tech, input the number of successes below. Again, we need 2 value ranges, one for 0 to 0. If they don't get any successes, they just get the text, you don't make any progress, you need to keep trying. And if they get at least one success, we launch the event busted, because this is the event that happens when the door to the munition work opens. Now, one thing is important. By default, events can only be launched once, but the munition works door test should be repeatable, because the players, of course, can try it again and again if they fail. So we need to click this event is repeatable to make sure that the event can be fired multiple times. Let's click accept. And what we have to do now is link it to the door. So double click on the door. Let's write a hero may test to try and open the door, and add a new button. This costs an interaction. Try to open door, and link that to the event munition works door test. So now when that button is clicked, the test is launched. When the event busted launches, quite a few things happen. First, we need the description text. I've already prepared it here. And we just copy it into the text box. Next, of course, we need to tell the app to open the door. So we go on Modify Map Entity, select Door 2, because that is the door to the munition works, and tell them to open it. Then, of course, this gives the players access to Section 2. So we need to activate Section 2. This is done via the event action Map and Tokens Map Management, Activate Map Section Munition Works. Now the door opens and reveals the map behind it. Next, the mission tells us to deploy the reserved wing guard to the munition works. And now we see we have no deployment point in the munition works. But that's not a problem, we can just add one. Switch over to the munition works and add a new deployment point. I'm just going to drag it here and call it DP Wing Guard 1. You can leave it inactive because it's only used to deploy the wing guard. Let's get back to the event and use the enemy deployment event action, filter by reserved to select the reserved wing guard, and then select deployment to deploy them to a specific deployment point. In this case, of course, the wing guard deployment point. Let's move on. The mission tells us to increase threat by 2, and we can do this via the event action modify threat and just say modify by 2. We could also go -2, but in this case we want to increase threat. Now we need to activate the yellow deployment point and deactivate the green deployment point. That's not a problem, because the yellow deployment point was automatically activated as soon as the section was activated, so all we have to do is deactivate the green point. We can do this via the modify map entity event action, selecting the green deployment point and deactivating it. Done. Last but not least, the players get some more information so they know what they need to do. I'm just going to add another text box and paste the information in here. And of course, it makes sense to also update the mission info and the objectives. Let's hop over to Imperial Commander and see if it worked. I restart the mission. Now I try to open the door to the munition works. Try to open door. Let's say I gain 0 successes. I don't make any progress. I try it again. I can repeat the event. I get 1 success and the door opens. You can see now the door is opened and the second section has been revealed. The wing guard appears and the mission info and objectives are updated. Let's continue. Next, we need to open the door to the gallery. According to the mission, this requires a strength or tech test with 2 successes necessary to open the door. Because the door to the gallery needs another test, we can just repurpose the event for the munition works door. So I'm going to duplicate it and then rename it gallery door test. The input prompt is pretty much the same, but instead of just tech, they are able to test strength or tech, and they need 2 successors. So I'm going to adjust the value ranges 0 to 1 and 2 to infinity. We also need the event last stand, so let's add this and then link the gallery door test to the event last stand, like this. And finally, let's link the door to the test event. Try to open door, and when clicked, this fires the event gallery door test. Now let's take care of the last stand event. First, we want the event to open the door, so I'm going to select door 3 and open it. And of course, we want it to reveal section 3. So I'm going to choose turret room, activate, and hit accept. The description text describes how one of the gang fires a gun at the heroes. So I'm just going to copy the description text over and insert it in the text box. The mission also describes that the shaded spaces are the turret here, but I forgot the highlight before, so I'm going to add it now. I just click on Add Highlight, then I set its size to a width of 2 and the color to red, enter, and set it to active and then drag it over to the turret. Of course, I'm still in the start section, so this is assigned to the start section. So I choose the turret room and change its owner to the turret room section. We don't need to activate the highlight manually because it's assigned to the section and it's going to be activated as soon as the section is activated. The event also deploys the reserved Trandoshan hunters to the red point, so let's add this to the event. Deployment, enemy deployment, filter by reserved, Trandoshan hunter, and click on deployment and assign it to a specific deployment point, in that case the DP red 1. Next is the actual shot by the gun turret. This is just a text box, so we can simply copy the text and add a text box and tell the players what to do. Now we have come to a point where we need to do things a bit differently from the mission. The mission states that for the rest of the mission, the Empire may not deploy or reinforce figures, and that the mission ends when all Imperial figures have been defeated. A human Imperial player would have deployed as many figures as possible up until now, but the app doesn't know about that, so we have to make sure that this isn't too easy. This is why, just in case the app has saved the entire thread up until now, I'm going to add another deployment event. First, another text box telling them more gang members rush in from all sides. Now for the deployment event, I click on Deployment, Optional Deployment, and simply select this as an onslaught to any active deployment point. Onslaught means that the Empire gains a little bit of threat and then spends all the threat it has to deploy as many figures as possible, which is exactly what we want to do. Now we want to stop the app from deploying any more figures after that. So we go to General, Mission Management, and click Pause Deployment. Event actions are fired one after the other. So after the optional deployment, the app then pauses any deployment until we unpause it. We could change the order by clicking on the arrows, but in this case, we want this to be after the optional deployment. Now, of course, we need to actually tell the players about the new win condition. So we're going to add another text box and just put in a bit of text. You ready weapons, it's time to end this. The Empire may not deploy or reinforce figures. The rebels win when all have been defeated. The rebels lose, and so on. Let's also update the mission info. And of course, the objective. Okay, time to test it in the app. I'm going to restart the mission and just click through all the windows. Open the first door. Open the second door. This time, one success is not enough. So, 2 successes. Here's the onslaught. And now it's time for the big showdown. You may have noticed that I didn't actually tell the players that the red highlight is the turret. So let's change this. Open the text box again and just add red highlight. We're almost done. We only need 2 more events. The 2 end of mission events, Rebel Victory and Rebel Defeat. Let's start with the Rebel Defeat. I'm going to create a new event, end of mission, Rebels Lose, and then just copy over the entire text from the campaign booklet. In case you're wondering, micro missions are a feature of the In the Dark campaign, and you can find all details about them in the campaign booklet. We only need a single event action, and that is Mission Management End Mission. We also need to tell the app when to fire this event, and the mission ends either at the end of round 6 or when all heroes are wounded. So I'm going to activate end of round, enter 6 here, and all heroes are wounded. By default, events listen to all of the triggers. This means that the mission only ends right now at the end of round 6 when all heroes are wounded, but we want it to end if either all heroes are wounded or end of round 6 has come. So I'm going to switch it from all to any. This wraps up the Rebels Lose event. For the Rebel Victory event, let's create another event. End of mission, Rebels Win. And again, copy over the entire text. There. This also, of course, ends the mission. And this event is triggered when all enemy groups are defeated. Here. However, there's one problem. The event listens to the triggers all the time. So this means that right now, if at any time during the mission all enemy groups are defeated, the rebels automatically win. I'm going to demonstrate this to you by heading over to Imperial Commander and restarting the mission. So now when I defeat all groups, even though the gallery is not yet revealed, the rebels win the mission. Of course, this is not how it's supposed to work. We want the win condition only to apply when the gallery has been revealed and all enemy groups have been defeated. For this, we can use another trigger. So I'm going to add a second trigger. Let's call it Last Stand Active, with a maximum value of 1, and then add it to the Rebels Win event. This time I leave which triggers fire this event at all, because I want the event only to fire when both triggers apply. Last Stand Active starts with a value of 0, and so I need Last Stand to change that value to 1. So I'm going to add another modifier variable, add Last Stand Active, and set it to 1. Now the event Last Stand sets the Last Stand Active trigger to 1, and once this is done and all enemy groups have been defeated, then the rebels win. Let's try it out. I'm going to head over to Imperial Commander again and restart the mission. Click away all the windows. And now, when I defeat all the enemy groups, the mission does not end. Let's open the doors. Open the second door. And now Last Stand is active. And when I now defeat all the enemy groups, the rebels win. We can also, of course, test the lose conditions. Let's restart the mission again. First lose condition is wound all heroes. This triggers the event rebels lose. Restart the mission again. The next lose condition is the end of round 6. So let's just click to the end of round 6. 1 second. End round. End round. End round. End round. End round. And at the end of round 6, the rebels lose. This wraps things up. The mission is now completely playable, and all that is left is to test it as thoroughly as possible. Click through the mission, test each interaction as often as you can, and make sure it works. It also makes sense to play it 1 or 2 times to see if the balance works, and then it's ready to be published. I'm going to add one little finishing touch in the Mission tab. Right now, I don't have any description set for it. The description for a mission is usually what you find on the card text, but because Spearhead is the introduction mission, there is no card for it. That's why I simply copy over the intro text from the campaign. I've prepared that here, and I can just copy it over and save it. Maybe you're wondering, but how can I create my own missions instead of just adapting existing ones? The process is exactly the same. You can either start by writing everything down on a piece of paper and playing with the physical map pieces, or just open the map editor and make things up as you go. Both approaches work, but please remember that you need to test play your mission thoroughly when you create an entirely new mission, because the balancing is hard to get right. After a few tries and errors, it's going to work. And that's it. You can find a link to the campaign and to the mission I just created in the video description. Thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to what kind of missions you come up with.